welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to discuss how we can create our own unit studies within our home education. And how I do this, well, there's two ways that I can do a unit study. I can do a unit study by choosing a topic and then diving deep into that one topic, not going cross curricula. Or I can choose a topic and then dive deep and then go cross curricula in the areas of math, science, social studies, literature, English language arts, and things of that nature. But today we're going to discuss choosing a topic, creating a case study for that topic, and then doing a unit study cross curricula. So I'm going to turn the camera over and then show you how I do it. And if you want a copy of what I'm using today, feel free to leave me a comment in the in the description box below. Leave me a comment in the comment box below with your email address, and I'll be more than happy to send you a copy of this specific case study and unit study approach, and you can tweak it to your own liking. All right, so let's go ahead and turn that camera over. The quick video that you just saw was about the Challenger disaster, NASA's Challenger disaster. So what I did was I first used this book here. Let me show you. This is a math book, okay? It is called 10 Things All Future Mathematicians and Scientists Must Know, but Rarely Taught. And it is by Ed Zakara. Ed Zakara is a mathematician who taught gifted students, okay? And then he decided to go ahead and create several math books for gifted students, but they can, those resources can be used for, your traditional students, your mathy students. It's just great problem solving skills and great word problems that will help with critical thinking and analysis. But this book here is how math and science work together. So I got this case study idea and this unit study idea from this book here. Let me show you the table of contents from this book. Chapter 1, Math and Science, how they work together to tell you the truth. Chapter 2, Your Mind Can Be Fooled, Counterintuitive Thinking. Okay, and if you just look at all of the chapters, it talks about, again, how math and science work together. And it gives you real life situations that has took place in the field of science, and it goes and it explains what happened, and it ties math and science together. So when I looked at this and I saw a chapter for the Challenger disaster, I said, oh, this would be a great case study and a great unit study that I can do cross curricula. So this here kind of briefly explains and talks to you about the Challenger disaster, okay? This book is great for middle school and high school, by the way. So again, he uses cartoons and simple language to explain what happened. At the end of this particular chapter, he gives you some discussion questions. Okay, so what I did was I went online and I pulled an article, okay? There are many articles from 1986 in this particular situation, January 28th, 1986, that talks about what happened, what was in the news on that particular day for this particular event. So I printed something out. Well, he had, first of all, let me back up. He had to, or he will have to, because we have not done this yet. I am planning right now to do this when he is in the 6th grade. So I'm going to have him go and look up 2 or 3 articles, okay? And he's going to read those articles, which will basically allow him to go back in time and read the thoughts of those who experienced this disaster. So once he does that, once he looks at, a few videos, 1 or 2 videos, and once he reads, 1 or 2 articles, he is going to read this document here. And we're going to go through this document together. And what this document is basically a case study that gives you a brief snippet of what happened. It talks about what the main problem was, when did it happen, where did it happen, and how did it impact the organization's goals. So that's the basic case study. The purpose of the case study is to have him think through a process. I want him to use his critical thinking skills. So what he's going to do together, we're going to do this together, and then he'll have a different case study where he will do on his own. He will have to go ahead and define the problem in his own words. He's going to have to give me some information about what took place. And then we're going to do a root cause analysis. And the root cause analysis basically has the student answer the question, why? And every step of the way, every answer that you can have, you're going to continue to ask the question why until you can't ask anymore. And then that in turn becomes the root cause, the main reason as to why something took place, okay? In your root cause analysis, he's going to identify the problem. He's going to explain why it happened and what will be done. That's the whole point. Problem, analysis, solution. So let me show you what his end product will look like. His end product will look something like this. So I'm going to give him a blank template, okay? The blank template will basically have all of this information, not information, but all of this space, all of this, all the blocks and the charts and the tables, they will be here blank. And then he is going to have to fill it out. And what I want it to look like is this, okay? So this is where he identifies the main problems. Don't worry about this here. This dollar figure is basically the impact, okay? $1 billion impact to the organization. So I have that here, but I more than likely will just have him write that in because that's the financial impact of what took place, okay? He's going to do a mapping, which basically identifies what caused the situation, which was the O-ring leaks in cold weather. He's going to do his cause mapping here. Again, I spoke about problem, analysis, and solution. Okay. And then this is a more detailed mapping where he will ask the question why. Keep going, asking the question why. We'll both go through it together until he gets to the main root cause. Okay. And then we'll go even further. and then we'll talk about some possible solutions. Again, all this information will be found in the case study, which is about 4 pages long, to include news article clippings and things of that nature. Okay, so again, the whole point of the case study is to have him dive deep into a topic, do some root cause analysis, come up with some potential solutions, look at some actual solutions, look at what they actually did in the end because of this disaster. And I think it will really cause him to think critically, analyze information, ask questions, because in math and science, it's all about asking the right question. And I love this right here. Read this. I love it. It says, math is not like a referee or an umpire that you can get mad and accuse of favoritism, blindness, or incompetence. Math is different. Math doesn't care how much you want something to be true, how many people your idea will help, how much easier life would be if something were true. Math is coldly indifferent, but it does one thing very well. Math and science will give you a clear view of a situation. It is up to you whether you pay attention to it or not. And, reading this case study and doing this here in preparation, this was extremely interesting to me. And I think a lot of students who go through the process of doing a case study will also find it extremely interesting. So that's the case study: critical analysis, flow charting, understanding how to analyze information logically, learning methods such as cause mapping, flow charting. You can even do a Venn diagram if you so choose. This just gets them to process information in a more logical way, okay? How can we utilize this case study cross curricula? Well, I wrote a few ideas down. Some ways that you can build a unit study off of this one case study, I thought of a few ways. Sorry for my finger in the camera. So I figured first we'll do the case study. After the case study, here are some other opportunities. Ronald Reagan made a speech. Let's listen or watch that speech. Therefore, we're going to also talk about Ronald Reagan, some of his accomplishments. What number was he within the presidency? And we're going to also talk about one of the quotes that he said. And I'll ask my son, what does that mean to you? We'll dissect it. And I like the quote as well. It says, I want to say something to the school children of America. I know it's hard to understand, but sometimes painful things like this happen. It's all part of the process of exploration and discovery. It's all part of taking a chance and expanding man's horizon. The future doesn't belong to the faint-hearted. It belongs to the brave. I love it. So we'll talk about that. This here is government. For world history, I said, what else was going on in history when this event took place? So here is a quick video that tells you everything that took place in history around the world. And I pulled some ideas out of that quick video to dive deeper into. So if we wanted to talk about world histories, for me specifically African studies, we're going to talk about the Angolan unity leader that visited Washington on that day. We're also going to talk about one of the astronauts that were on the that was actually there and who actually lost his life. He was part of the Challenger crew. That's African American history. British history. On January 28th, but not specifically in 1986, obviously, Henry VIII died. Who is Henry VIII? We'll dive into that. British history. On January 28th, again, not in 1986, but on that day, Congress created the Coast Guard. That's U.S. government. For U.S. history and world history, We can even talk about the fact that the Paris Peace Accord ended the Vietnam War on January 28th. I forget what year, but the whole point is on January 28th of 1986 and or on January 28th of any year prior to the Challenger disaster taking place, what was going on. So we can talk about the Vietnam War, the peace treaty that ended it. We can talk about Henry Kissinger, who won the Nobel Peace Prize for that peace accord. We can again go into African American history and talk about Muhammad Ali in the Vietnam War, civil rights during the Vietnam War, Latinos and Hispanics during the Vietnam War. For geography here, we can dive into a country study of Angola and do some mapping. We can dive deep in, and discuss the Atlantic Ocean. What does a coast mean? We can talk about Cape Canaveral in Florida and do a state study there. We can talk about Cambodia and do a country study and do mapping. We can talk about Vietnam and do a country study. Okay, so as you can see, we brought in geography. Now, in terms of English language arts, there's so much vocabulary. What is Congress? Or what is a Congress? We can talk about that to include the political process and their role. What is NASA? What does it stand for? We can talk about the Nobel Peace Prize. What is it? Give examples of who's received the honor. What is foreign policy? For government, we can talk about different types of governments. And we can talk about which one governs the United States. We can talk about the word resistance. We can even go further and talk about different examples of resistance, like the Haitian Revolution, and even during the Vietnam War. Vietnam called that war the Resistance War against America. We can bring in memory work, speech, copy work, and dictation from the speech that Reagan gave and the quote that he gave. We can have the children memorize it. We can have them do some oratorical practice by saying it out loud to us, paying attention to inflection and tone. We can do copy work by having them copy this for handwriting purposes. We can do dictation by reading it to them and then having them write what we say. We can watch documentaries. Here are some examples of some documentaries that we can watch and some books that we can read. All of this was based on the case study that we did for the Challenger. Do you see that? So just with the one case study for Challenger, we pulled out so much stuff that we could have gone into, because we said what took place in history that year and what took place in history on that day on any particular year. And we just dived into so much other stuff. Hopefully that makes complete sense to you. Let me show you another example here. And there wasn't much math with that one. Here, the Hubble Telescope. You can do a unit study on that, okay? This is great science, and it absolutely has math. And you can do your research and you can say, okay, planning for the Hubble Telescope started in the 1960s. You can find out what was going on during the time in which the planning process took place. What was going on during the time when it actually became a successful end product. We can create our own. You can draw it. You can use watercolors. You can paint. There we go with the art. You can, use some polymer clay and try to recreate something like a prototype. That's still art. The science is the actual telescope itself. You can have your child build their own telescope utilizing various things that you may have within your home or items that you can get very cheaply. Here are some discussion questions. That's your reading comprehension. You can choose a sentence and you can classify or diagram that particular sentence. There you go with your grammar. When they're actually writing the responses out, make sure the handwriting is neat. Make sure it's logical, okay? And it's comprehensive. You can have them type one of the responses. There we go with practicing with typing. You can have them write their responses in cursive. You can have them orally dictate their responses to you, right? Here we go with some math for this particular one. They give you some math questions. How many square inches are in a square foot? Here is some math right here. All of this is math. Science and math go together. And in this book here, they give you various levels of math. Level 1 being the easiest, level 2 being mid-range, level 3 being difficult, and genius level being the most difficult. Okay? So that's how you can utilize a book like this to dive deep cross curricula. Or let's go back to my example of the Challenger. If you just wanted to stick with the study of the Challenger and not, dive outside of that particular topic, then you can do just that. You can have your children build something, paint something, and there you go with your art. You can bring in literature. There's more than likely some piece of literature out there about this particular event that took place, or just a piece of literature about astronauts or about space or about spaceships. Bring in astronomy as an example. So many ways, so many options that you can take when doing a case study or taking a unit study approach with any one or more topics. Case studies, I would definitely do this in middle and high school. It is, again, great for critical thinking, researching information, analyzing the information, determining what's fact or opinion, and you can even bring some logic or some rhetoric into it as well based on the articles that you read and the information that you gather. So I hope this made sense to you guys. If you have any questions for me,